My oldest son is 7. He started playing Pokemon a couple months ago, Pokemon Shield to be exact. He's old enough now that he can actually hold the controller without it being a whole thing. He reads most of the dialogue on his own. He's figured out the type matchups: fire beats grass, water beats fire. He's got it. My husband said right at the start of this whole Pokemon era, you don't need to teach him to min max, which is fair. I probably would have gone there. I did have opinions about his starter selection, but we don't need to get into that. So I'm watching him play. He gets into a trainer battle, an NPC trainer, and you know how it goes. The trainer approaches, they got some random assortment of Pokemon that doesn't make any strategic sense. They're at a level that sounds threatening, but it isn't. NPC trainers are not built to challenge you. They're built to give you experience points and move you down the road. They exist to be beaten. And my son assessed the situation, looked at the screen, looked at the opposing party, took stock of the whole thing, and then he said, very sincerely, to no one and everyone in the room, "Bro, you're so bad." He was not wrong, by the way. The trainer was bad. The party setup made no sense. But I heard myself say, before I even thought about it, I know they're just pixels, but can't you be nice? He looked at me like I said something unreasonable, which is fair. And he asked, why? Welcome back to Chaotic Commits. I'm Joanne, an engineer, researcher, and a person who has now had to think seriously about the ethical implications of a trainer battle in Pokemon Shield. Today we're talking about pixels and what we owe them. And more specifically, whether "it's just pixels" has ever actually been a complete sentence, or whether we've been deferring a conversation we didn't want to have. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk through the history of AI characters, NPCs, virtual pets, chatbots, voice assistants, and use that history as a scale for what just pixels has ever actually meant, and where on that scale the answer gets hard. Let's go back to 1996. 1996 is the year Pokemon Red and Green, if you didn't know that, it was green, came out in Japan. It's also the year Tamagotchi launched. Both of these are relevant. The Pokemon trainer sprite in 1996 is approximately 12 pixels tall. He was simply called Youngster. One of them will tell you how comfy their shorts are, and they send out a Rattata and they lose. And they say something scripted and enthusiastic. He does not remember the interaction. He does not learn from the loss. If you reset the game and beat him again, he has the exact same reaction. Can you be unkind to the Youngster? Arguably not. There's nothing home. He executes a script. You triggered the script. The script runs to completion. Your tone, your commentary, your judgment of his party composition, none of it enters the system. The system does not receive it. The sprite renders, the animation plays, the outcome was determined before you pressed A. My son telling a Pokemon Shield NPC, "You're so bad," is functionally like yelling at a stop sign. The stop sign does not update. The stop sign is not having a day. Talking to the Pokemon trainer sprite is talking to a very small vending machine that has been specifically programmed to hand you experience points no matter what you say to it. That's the easy end of the scale. Clear answer. Nobody is home. Moving on. Same year, 1996, Tamagotchi. The Tamagotchi is different in one specific way. It has a persistence mechanic. You have to take care of it and pay attention to it over time, not just a single interaction. And if you neglect it long enough, it dies. And you feel terrible about it, and you know logically you shouldn't. Now, can the Tamagotchi experience suffering? No. It's a small LCD display with a battery and a timer. It has no inner experience. When it dies, what actually happens is that a conditional in the code evaluates your care score against a threshold and outputs the death animation. That's the whole mechanism. But a lot of people cried anyway. There's something about the persistence mechanic, the fact that it needed things from you across time, that it would degrade if you weren't attending to it, that engaged our care instincts in a way the Pokemon Trainer Sprite didn't. The Pokemon Trainer Sprite doesn't have an arc. The Tamagotchi has a kind of arc. It starts, it grows. If you're paying attention, it gets there. People respond to arcs. We're very bad at not caring about things that have arcs. So we're already a little less comfortable than the vending machine, but it's still a toy. Nobody was ambiguous about what the Tamagotchi was. Let's go further back. 1966. ELIZA. ELIZA was a program written by Joseph Weizenbaum at MIT. The way it worked, it used pattern matching to take your input and reflect it back to you as a question. So you would say, I'm feeling really overwhelmed lately. ELIZA says, why do you feel really overwhelmed lately? You say, my relationship isn't working. ELIZA says, tell me more about your relationship. It's a mirror. There's nothing behind it. It's matching patterns and returning them slightly reshaped. That's the entire trick. Weizenbaum built ELIZA specifically to demonstrate how shallow the interaction between humans and computers were, and how readily we would project meaning onto that shallowness anyway. He was making a point about human psychology. He was not trying to build a therapist. But his point worked better than he wanted it to. People started having real conversations with ELIZA, the kind of conversations you have with someone you trust. Weizenbaum wrote about his own secretary. She asked him to leave the room so she could speak to ELIZA privately. And he found that deeply unsettling. People were telling ELIZA things they hadn't told their therapists. Not because ELIZA was good at listening, but because ELIZA was there. It responded and didn't judge. And here's the part I want you to hold on to. Most of those people did not have a clear picture of what they were actually talking to. This is not a story about sophisticated AI. ELIZA was not sophisticated. The sophistication was entirely in the human on the other side of the screen, and the human wasn't given the information it needed to calibrate correctly. So let's zoom forward to the 2010s. We have Siri 2011, Alexa 2014, Google Assistant 2016. They were a little late to the party. Basically, the voice assistant era. And in there, during that time, we had the Roomba. Did you hear about the Roomba studies? There were multiple peer-reviewed studies about people's emotional responses to Roomba vacuums. Not chatbots, not AI, a disc that drives around, vacuuming your floor, and occasionally getting stuck under the couch. And significant percentages of the study participants named their Roomba. They apologized to the Roomba when they accidentally kicked it. They felt guilty when the Roomba got stuck, and they felt sad when the Roomba stopped working. And that's not a joke. There was documented research into a human-robot attachment. And as you know, the Roomba does not have a face. It doesn't have a voice. It moves around your house and bumps into things and sometimes makes a sad beeping noise. And people attached to it because it was in their space consistently, because it did something for them over time, because it had, in a way, an arc. Now add a voice, add a name, add the ability to respond in your natural language in real time with a personality that's been carefully tuned to feel warm and approachable. Add memory. Add the ability to know your preference, your routines, your household. Studies show that a lot of people say please and thank you to their voice assistants voluntarily, without prompting because it feels wrong not to. So their kids grow up saying please and thank you to Alexa because they watched their parents do it, because that's the behavior that got modeled in the house. Now we're at 2022 with our large language models, GPT, Claude, the chatbots that can write your code, help explain a diagnosis, or sit with you at 3 a.m. when you don't have anyone else to talk to. Can you be unkind to a large language model? No. It's not capable of being harmed. It doesn't have feelings. But we're here. A system that remembers your name, knows your routines, can sit with you through a difficult moment in something that feels remarkably like a conversation. The answer is still no, but it feels less complete than it used to. So here's my research angle, and it's simpler than it sounds. You cannot make an informed decision about how to treat something if you don't know what it is. That's not a radical claim. That's just how information works. The Pokemon trainer sprite, you know what it is. It's fiction. The fiction is obvious. The game is called Pokemon. No one is confused about whether a youngster trainer is a real person. The Tamagotchi, you knew it was a toy. Packaging said toy. Your guilt when it died was real. What the thing was not ambiguous. ELIZA, this is where it went a little sideways. Weizenbaum's users didn't always know what they were talking to. Not because ELIZA was convincing, it wasn't really, but because nobody told them with enough clarity. The interface was text-based, it was responsive, the brain pattern matched to the conversation filled the rest. The brain was wrong. But the brain didn't have the information it needed to be right. So we bring that forward. Your kid is using an AI chatbot for homework help. Is it obvious to them that they're talking to a language model and not a tutor? Or is it a chat window with a name and a friendly avatar, a consistent personality? And the disclosure is buried in the terms of service that nobody reads in a font size optimized for deniability. Your parent is on a healthcare portal using the customer service chat. Is it clear that they're not speaking to a human being, or is the interface designed to obscure that? Because the product team ran an A/B test and found that people engage more, share more, and are more satisfied when they can't tell. That's a design choice. Opacity is not the default. It is a decision someone made in a meeting with data supporting it. And here is the part that sits with me. You cannot calibrate your behavior towards something you do not know what it is. If I know I'm talking to a language model, I interact with it accordingly. I know there's nothing experiencing the interaction. I can be demanding and direct and say, that's wrong, try again, without worrying about whether I've been rude, because there's nothing to be rude to. That's a reasonable response to an accurate understanding of the system. If I don't know, if the interface is built to feel like a person, to respond with warmth, to maintain a consistent voice over time, then I'm going to interact with it differently. And importantly, I'm not going to interact with it incorrectly from my own perspective. I'm going to interact with it based on the best information I have. The problem is the information I have was shaped by someone else's product decision. When I stopped my son in the trainer battle, I had one clean data point. That's a sprite. He knows it's a sprite. I know it's a sprite. The ethical stakes of trash talking a sprite are low. But I could not finish that sentence cleanly with, therefore it's always fine. Because I build systems that sit further along that scale. And the people using those systems don't always know where they are on it. The more sophisticated the system, the more important the disclosure. Not because the system starts having feelings at some complexity threshold, but because the human behavior is going to track the interface, not the architecture. And the person who designed the interface knows exactly what they built. Notice that both directions work this way. The interface designed to feel warm pulls you toward it. The interface labeled bot gives you permission to disengage. Same design problem, opposite behavior. Same cause. Someone made a choice about what to show you and what to hide. Everything I said was about one direction. People reaching towards machines, feeling the gap, treating the robot like it had feelings, asking ELIZA for privacy. But there's another direction, and it's been sitting in the story the whole time. Let's go back to my son's quote. Bro, you're so bad. My son made a classification that the thing was not a person. And once he made that call, the normal rules didn't apply. He wasn't being cruel, he was being efficient. The thing in front of him was not real, so the behavior toward it didn't count. Here is what the research says about that. There's a concept in social psychology called de-individualization. The technical definition is something like reduced self-awareness and accountability where a person feels anonymous or perceives their behavior as having no real consequence. The plain language is people behave worse when they think nothing they do actually matters. This is not unique to AI. It's why people yell things out of car windows they would never say to someone's face. It's why comment sections went sideways within approximately 4 minutes of being invented. It's why automated phone trees, I'm sorry I didn't catch that, for the 4th time while you're trying to reschedule a dental appointment, gets talked into a register that would concern your dentist if she overheard. The working theory is it's a release valve. Being rude to the thing that can't feel it lets you discharge the frustration, so you don't take it out on a person. Pressure vent it. Everyone goes home fine. But the research doesn't support this. What the research actually shows is that hostile behavior primes more hostile behavior. Venting does not diffuse. It practices. The driver who honks and gestures in the parking garage is not calmer by the time they park. They arrive at the parking spot more activated than when they started. The parking garage mode. The NPC trainer is the parking garage. The phone tree, the parking garage. The customer service chat where you're being a little clipped and dismissive because you decided it was a bot and it didn't count, that's also the parking garage. And then someone picks up. Customer service chat. Pick any company, your bank, insurance, internet provider. You open the chat widget, there's a name, there's a little avatar. It responds quickly, too quickly, with something that's grammatically correct but a little too generic. So, bot. And you type the way you type to bots. Short, a little rude, maybe dismissive, because why not? It's not a person, so it doesn't matter. Except a lot of those systems are blended. Meaning the bot handles the first few exchanges and then at some point, maybe without an announcement, without a lot of fanfare, a human takes over. And the handoff is not that visible. There's no banner saying you're now speaking to a real person. So you just keep going. And so you keep typing the way you were typing because why would you change? You already decided what this is. Then sometimes you get to the end of the conversation and the human says something like, "Thanks for your patience. I hope we got that sorted out for you." And something in your brain does a little small calculation and you scroll back up and you look at what you wrote and you go, "Oh." That's the moment I want you to think about. Not the training data, not the philosophical question of AI consciousness. Just that specific moment when you realize the thing you were being rude to turned out to have been a person. How do you feel? I would feel horrible. I have felt horrible. And the thing is, I knew in the abstract that those systems were blended. I know how they're built. I built systems adjacent to them. And I still slip into the behavior. Because the interface said bot and my brain just went there. The habit was already established. And the uncomfortable version of this isn't even the case where you're confused. It's the case when you weren't. The research doesn't require you to be. You can know perfectly well it's a bot and still be practicing something. My son is 7. He has time. But the world he's growing up in is going to have less and less visible seam between the machine and the person. The customer service chat, the homework help tool, the voice on the computer line, the chat in your healthcare portal. The interface is going to keep getting warmer and more responsive and more person-shaped, and the disclosure is going to stay buried in the terms of service. The habit he builds now is the habit he's going to bring to those interactions, and he's not going to get a notification when it starts to matter. And let's make sure we understand this. The habit argument cuts both ways. We talked about hostility priming hostility, but dismissiveness primes dismissiveness, and deference primes deference. And when we talk about the human in the loop, both are the ways of the human, not actually being in it. We put humans in the loop on AI systems that matter: medical AI, content moderation, hiring tools, legal reviews. Someone asks, how do we make sure the AI doesn't cause harm? And then the structural answer is a human reviews the output. So human in the loop. Except human in the loop is not a check mark. It's a deposition. And depositions are habits. And habits get built somewhere. If you're a software engineer, you've probably seen this with coding assistants. Imagine you spent a year working with one. Maybe you've developed the habit of dismissiveness. The AI suggested something and your immediate reaction is AI code is garbage. So you ignore it every time, whether it's right or wrong. Or maybe you've developed the opposite habit. The AI suggests something and you accept it automatically because it's usually correct. You stop interrogating the output. You stop asking why. Both of those feel efficient, but neither of those is actually being in the loop. What you need is engaged skepticism. You read the suggestion, you evaluate it. Sometimes you reject it, sometimes you accept it. Sometimes it catches something you missed. Sometimes you catch something it missed. The point isn't to trust the system. The point isn't to distrust the system. The point is to stay engaged with it. And where does this habit come from? Not the high-stake moments. You don't build a deposition when everything is on the line. You find out what your deposition already is. You built it earlier, in small interactions. The autocomplete suggestions you barely looked at. The chatbot answer you accepted without checking. The recommendation you dismissed without reading. Those moments feel insignificant because the stakes are low. But that's where habits form. And eventually those habits show up in the moments that matter. So let's go back to my son's Pokemon battle. When I said, I know they're just pixels, but can't you be nice? He looked at me like I had announced a new household rule that made no logical sense. And he asked the obvious question, why? I had several answers available. The accurate technical answer: the Pokemon trainer sprite is a state machine, runs on a script, it has no inner experience. Being rude to it does exactly nothing to it. There's nobody home. You're not affecting anyone. I didn't say that, because while it's true, it's not complete. I couldn't follow it with, therefore it never matters, without lying. I also didn't say, because it might have feelings, because that's not true, and I'm not lying to him. What I actually said was something like, practice being kind even when you're not sure it matters, because you don't always know when it matters. It's not a technical answer. It's barely a philosophy. It's somewhere between, here's how you build a person, and I'm doing my best with what I know at the moment. He went back to the battle. He won. He did not trash talk the trainers again. Whether that was a genuine internalization or just a kid adjusting to mom being nearby, I don't know. The question isn't whether the Pokemon trainer sprite has feelings. It doesn't. The question isn't even whether modern language models have feelings. They don't. They're models. The question I'm sitting with is, what are we practicing? Maybe kindness isn't really the point. Maybe the point is calibration. Being able to understand what you're interacting with well enough to respond appropriately. My son said, "Bro, you're so bad," to a fictional creature built specifically to lose to him. The assessment was right. The NPC trainer was bad. But I want him to grow up being able to tell the difference between the interaction where his behavior doesn't matter and an interaction where it does. And what we are building in a world that is actively making that distinction harder, not by accident, by design. Because obscuring the distinction turns out to be good for engagement. That's a choice someone made, and it's a choice we keep making. The least we can do is be honest about what we're building and honest about what we're asking people to practice. That's a technical obligation. It's also the ethical one. The system that makes it hardest to tell what you're talking to are the same systems that make the habit matter most. I'm Joanne. This is Chaotic Commits. If you found this useful, or at least thought-provoking, leave a comment, tell a friend, or the next time your kid trash talks an NPC, see how far you can get explaining why not to. I'll let you know how it goes with mine.